the editing live stream where I edit your photos here live using DxO Photolab 9, which is the latest release, came out just this month. And just disclosure, I'm an affiliate for DxO, so I'll have my affiliate links down below if you're interested in purchasing it. And they've also given me a 15% discount code for my viewers here. So be sure and copy that if you decide to purchase it. And it's good for all of the DxO products. Only caveat is for new customers only. So if you've purchased DxO products in the past, you won't be able to use the coupon. But otherwise, it's a great deal. And I think DxO creates fantastic products, particularly the Photolab 9. It's my favorite photo editor of choice. And with the recent AI updates that they've done for subject selection and um, uh, some other workflow improvements, it's really improved quite a bit with Photolab 9. So I'd say, really, if you're on DxO Photolab 6 or 7, I would definitely upgrade to 9. If you're on 8, it's just kind of a question of whether or not you really need the AI selection tools, which I'll demonstrate here during the stream on your photos. And then, of course, there's the signature denoising and optical corrections, which is really their signature feature, in my opinion, more so than even the AI selection tools. That give you the very best output demosaicing of your raw images. So I would even argue if you're on Photolab 6 or higher, unless you need the AI tools, you may not need to upgrade. But I certainly think DxO Photolab 9 was a big improvement in terms of the workflow and with the use of the new selection tools. So this is the stream where you can submit your images before the stream starts, ideally, and I edit your photos. You know, what better way to demonstrate the power of DxO uh, if not with your own photos, right? So if you've been thinking about it, you can see how I edit them. And keep in mind that my editing here is not a critique at all of your images. It's simply how I would edit them if I had taken the photo. You know, every photographer has their own vision, and I don't want to influence that vision with, my edits. Always keep in mind that these are your photos, and the vision that you created with them are yours. The editing I do here is simply to demonstrate the tools of Photolab and also give you an idea of my workflow that I use when I'm editing my photos. And I'll try and think out loud or speak out loud why and I'm doing certain things and when I use certain tools and how I use them. And that's the primary goal of this stream. But hopefully, you like the edits that I do as well. And if you get a chance during the stream, if you've already edited the photo that you submitted, you can submit that using the same link, and we can compare your edits to mine. I prefer you send them during the stream so that I'm not influenced by your edits, right? Because I like to have a nice, fresh, clean look at the images without seeing someone else's edit first. But that said, it's always interesting to see what you guys do, and a lot of times you do a better job than I do. So, uh, all that said, thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's always a lot of fun, aside from all of the uh, administrative things I just talked about. I enjoy editing photos and uh, being with the community, being with you guys, and doing this. And that's why I stream so often. It's just I really enjoy the interaction that I have with my viewers. So thank you again for being here, and I hope you enjoy this stream. So with that said, I have Photolab 9 open, and I'll make one other side note. Um, I have I have backed off my latest. I'm using a Windows 11 PC with an NVIDIA GTX or RTX 4080 and I forget what generation, 12th or 13th generation Core i9. So it's a pretty powerful laptop. But I found that the AI selection tool, particularly the subject detection tool, was crashing a lot when I was using the latest NVIDIA drivers. So I backed off my driver to two previous versions, something that came out in early June, and I was getting much more stable performance. It still did crash once in a blue moon, but for the most part, it's very, very stable 2 drivers ago. not the current driver that NVIDIA has. And hopefully that'll get resolved very quickly. Uh, they're very good about updating. NVIDIA is very good about updating the drivers, and DxO is very good at resolving these kind of issues in updates. And then, of course, if you have any questions along the way, uh, I'll try and get to them. Like I'll edit 2 or 3 photos, then look at the chat section and see if there's any questions that I can answer. Um, and then move on to the next 2 or 3 photos, depending on how long each one takes, because otherwise I won't remember what the question is in reference to. So if you do ask a question, it's in reference to one of the edits that I did, just specify which picture it was you're asking about so that I can go back to that one. Okay. Um, let's see. I was doing some. Well, I'm running on like 3 hours of sleep here, so forgive me if I'm a little bit slow or seem a little lethargic. But let me go ahead and go into the folder that we need to be in, and let me just check the chat section real quick. Um, I need to. I'm sorry. Let me arrange my windows. Okay. All right. So John is here. Robert's here. Good to see you guys. And Jan and Larry, good morning. And William, oh, you have a question about the 304 or the 50 to 200. Okay, I'll come back to that one. But short answer is 300 millimeter f4 all day, every day. Uh, and I see Paul is here. Good to see you. A lot of regulars here. Simon. And if you're new to the stream here, just leave a comment and say hello. Let me know you're here, where you're from. It's always great to meet new people. Uh, do you still need an image to edit? Oh, Gord, good to see you. Go ahead and submit it, and if I get time, uh, if there's, if I still have some steam left in me, I'll go ahead and edit them here for you at the end. And Gord also says that the AMD 97XT with the latest drivers had no crashes, so that's really good news. Thanks so much for sharing that. And Serge is here. Good to see you, Serge. And I did get your Kingfisher picture because you had mentioned Sunday that you had taken your first one. So I'm really excited to see what you sent in. All right. Uh, so here we have, as soon as I opened up DxO into the folder, it immediately prompted me with um, DxO optics modules. And these are for optical corrections like sharpening, and it's an intelligent sharpening. It's not like just a dumb sharpening. It's very intelligent, based on the camera and lens combination, and that's one of the most powerful things in DxO Photolab. And then also, um, well, that's primarily reduce chromatic aberrations, if any, and vignetting, things like that. Fisheye correction. This is where DxO really shines, I think. And well, okay, let's move on. So let me click next, and we'll let those download. This is usually pretty fast. Um, I remember early on when I was using earlier versions, this used to take several minutes. But now I can usually download, an optics module within inside of a minute. In this case, you can see it only took about 15 seconds. And by the way, you can install and uninstall DxO modules, or you can uninstall DxO modules if you happen to download the wrong one, because sometimes you get multiple options. But that's for another video. All right, so we'll start here. We have one here from, let's see, Larry. Okay. It says Larry Roebuck. Very good. Beautiful canyon shot here. So my workflow is basically, the first thing I do is I apply a basic preset, which is the DxO optics module, because it's not applied by default. I apply the DxO module, optics module, and noise reduction, along with some very, very minor chromatic aberration corrections and things like that. And as you can see, it just kind of snapped and got rid of the lens distortion. That's usually zoom lenses have, noticeable distortion, but that's all corrected just like as if it was done in camera. But even better, in my opinion, because you actually sometimes gain a few extra pixels with the DxO optics module. Just a little bit along the edges. It's not a big deal. Okay, so then the next thing I do is I just look at the overall exposure, and the exposure here looks terrific. So I'm not going to do any kind of global changes right away. I can just get right into thinking about the composition at this point. And I love vertical compositions and landscapes. It's kind of a little bit contrary to most people like to do uh, portrait mode or horizontal. So I'm always excited to see this. I really feel like the vertical compositions eliminate some of the, dead space that you really don't need in a landscape composition typically. And the focus is really on the subject. That said, I think I can still crop in a little bit because there's not much going on up in here in the sky. So there's no elements here that are interesting in the composition. Really, all I have to do is separate the horizon line here of the mountains. So I can probably crop into maybe a 5 by 4. And I like to use the standard. So I'm going to go over here to the geometry page. And the other thing I want to emphasize is it's very important you do any kind of geometric changes to your images before you start to do any kind of local adjustments. Um, because some of the local adjustments don't follow the geometry if you change it later. So you're going to have to move your control points and other things sometimes if you adjust the geometry after the fact. And by geometry, I mean like straightening horizon, perspective distortions, like skewing and keystoning, and and of course the optical corrections as well, which in most lenses not an issue. But if it's like a fisheye lens and then you apply an optical correction, that could potentially also mess up your local adjustments. So always do your geometry first. So I'm going to go over here to the geometry panel. It's just what I call it. I don't know what it's called officially. And I'm going to, let's try a 5 by 4. And I like to use standard crops in here because it's easier to find picture frames that match standard crops if I decide to print these and display. But that said, you can enter your own custom ratios as well. And I have a few here that I've put in. Like my printer is a 13 by 19 printer, so if I want to fill the frame with the image, I would select this particular ratio. But in this case, I'm thinking about only displaying like online. So I think a 5 by 4 works. And what I might do is I'm always conscious of my corners, and I try to see if there's any, first of all, any distracting elements in the corners that I can just simply crop out a little, or I look for primarily lines that I can use that lead into the frame to help guide the viewer's eye. So in this case, what I see is there's a line right here along this highlight shadow area, and there's also a line here along the river. And my question a question to myself is, can I use both of those lines in the composition without losing any of the important elements? And I think in this case I can. And then you get an automatic like rule of thirds grid, and you don't have to follow the rules, but I like to use it to help me decide on getting sort of a three-dimensional depth to a two-dimensional image with so there'll be a foreground, which typically I would put in the lower thirds, mid-ground in the middle, and then the background in the top. And I can almost do that right here. You can see the foreground would be mostly the riverbed, the mid-ground would be the canyon rocks here, and then the background is mostly the sky. So this composition, I think, kind of works, uh, and we're still maintaining the vertical aspect without keeping too much of the negative space in the sky. So I'm going to go with this, and the horizon looks straight enough. It's very difficult sometimes with landscapes because there's really no straight lines in nature, other than say crystals, right? As far as I know. Now that I have my composition and exposure kind of set and my geometry, I'm going to think about local adjustments and how can I emphasize certain elements in the scene. What is the subject of the scene? Maybe what story am I trying to tell, if any? And story is kind of a leap, right? You always hear that term, tell a story in your picture. And really, there's no story in a picture in of itself. The story is really in the viewer's mind, right? So how does a person, read a story? They read all of the different sentences and subjects and verbs. If it was a paperback, say like a book, you look at the sentence for elements like adjectives, verbs, nouns, etc. So I try to look at a picture the same way. What are the elements in the picture that help tell or help the viewer create a story in their mind? Because you know how it is, the old psychology ink blots. People will say, "Tell me what do you see in this ink blot," and everybody has a different answer, right? And a photo is no different, right? We could all look at the same picture and potentially have a different story in mind, uh, or a different story will come to mind. Okay, so for me, I kind of like the contrast or juxtaposition of a riverbed and a desert, because that's part of what makes this picture interesting. So I want to try to emphasize and make sure that the water and the desert or the rocky area is very, very distinct and bring out as much detail in those two areas in contrast that I can. So water I typically make as dark as possible without looking unnatural. And that's the that's my whole goal in editing is to really emphasize certain elements, but still keep the image looking very natural and not over baked or over processed. And unfortunately, the sky doesn't give us any additional drama that we can work with. But um, I almost want to come in a little bit tighter because in the composition, I try to consider balance. So I have the depth that I want, but because this area up here is so empty, I'm thinking I might be able to come in even a little tighter like that. And I'm losing a little bit of my leading lines down here. I lost it completely over here, but I think it's okay. This feels a little better to me. Let me see. What if we come down lower? No, I think right about there works. I just want to maybe try to keep one line. Okay, I think that works pretty well. So now we have one line coming from this corner, and then we have a framing over here of the river with this rock ledge instead of a line leading you into the scene. If we were more centered into the river, I could probably, use both sides of the river. But in this case, I think um, we can just choose this one line to lead us in, and then this rock here will frame this part of the riverbed. And there's a nice reflection here in the river as well. And let me just say that the first couple of images, I usually take a little extra time explaining my thought process, and then we'll move along a little faster in the remaining images. Okay. All right. So let me just start with the rocks and the water, and then I'm going to think about this background a little differently. So I'm just going to use the local adjustments and I'm going to try, hopefully it doesn't crash, but I'm going to try some of the AI tools. So I'm going to select the AI mask here. And then when I go over the picture, you can see I have different choices here. So I can use my mouse to point at a subject. I can use a rectangle tool to kind of box it in, or I can use the AI tool, which has various subjects already predefined. So I'm not going to use that. I don't really need anything there. Uh, let me try the mouse pointer. 1 second. Oh, of course. On the very first image, I got an error. And that's probably because I selected this. I noticed that the subject detect is the biggest problem. So let me shut down real quick. I just have to reset it. I know I'm not doing DxO any favors by doing this, but at the same time, I am doing a favor to the community and to DxO at the same time because they need to fix that. But it doesn't deter me. I still recommend this software. They're going to fix this issue, just a matter of time. So right now, DxO is restarting. Just takes a minute. Okay. So let's go back. And I'm going to select the subject detect, and I'm just going to select the water. And I honestly, I don't really need to use the subject detect for, or the AI detect for this image. I just wanted to kind of demo it. But now that we've selected the water, I'm going to add some clear view. So as you can see, it makes the water a little bit shiny. And then I also like to add some micro contrast just to give it a little more definition. And then I'll pull the blacks in a little bit, and then I'll push the highlights again to increase the contrast because there's a nice reflection in there that I want to kind of emphasize. And I think that looks pretty good right there. Okay, let's create a new mask. And from here, I'm just going to use the control points. But what I want to do is maybe just bring out some of the detail in these rocks. And I can do that using the control points with its masking. And all I have to do is tighten up the chroma mask a bit so it doesn't select the water. And it does it in a very feathered way, so it's very natural. And maybe just a clip on the Luma. So in this selectivity sliders, I try not to do more than ±5 or ±10, just so that everything stays nice and natural and graduated. And let me just oops, let me just make these a little smaller so we're not bleeding into the mountains too much. Okay, so we have the mountains selected, or the rocks, and I'm thinking I'm going to try and start with just some micro contrast. I'm going to zoom in and just get a really close look at the detail. And what I can do is if I want to see the optics module and noise reduction applied as well, I can click the loop key and really punch in here. And I'm zoomed in at 400%, so that's why it looks a little bit soft, but it's actually very, very sharp. So what I'm going to do here, let me look at the detail over here. I kind of like this part here as a good reference. I think what I'll do here is I'm going to apply, let's see, I'm going to apply some unsharp mask, some additional unsharp mask, or let me just try the AI module, lens sharpening, or the DxO optics module, and we'll pull out some more detail. I think that looks pretty good right there. Okay, very good. All right, so now I think the rocks really pop. So that's the before and that's the after. So we have some nice detail in here. And maybe I will temper some of the highlights, but so I want to separate the tones a little bit more too. So I can do that again with a control point. So I'm going to create a new mask. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to select a couple of the shadow areas on my control points. So this is a nice shadow kind of area, and I'm going to tighten up the luma. I might go more than 10 in this case. Let's try 65. A little bit of a shadow area here. I'll expand that out. Some shadow area in here. And down here. And down here. Uh, and then let me tighten up the chroma mask because the water is about the same luminance as the rocks. And I'm just going to pull the blacks in and the shadows just like this. And when I'm using the selective tone sliders, I really try to keep a straight line. That keeps it looking very natural, I think. Because if I do too many extreme moves, things can start to look a little bit like cake, or especially on more familiar subjects. But I'm going to keep a straight line more or less. So let me see how that looks. I can click the compare tool. And when I have a mask selected, it's only going to show me the difference with and without that particular mask when I have it selected. So I think that looks better. So if I hit the escape key and deselect the mask, now I'm comparing the original raw image with the edited image in whole with all the adjustments. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. Now we have good definition and good shadows, and I may even darken this area. No, I think we're okay. All right, now the background, I kind of left this for last because I want to maintain sort of that very light haze that we have in the background, because that helps to give the perception of depth as well. Uh, I may even exaggerate it a little bit, but let's draw a control line just for the sky. And I'm going to put the eyedropper somewhere in the sky area, and let's just add some clear view to give the sky a little more separation there. Oops, hold on. I didn't make a new mask. Let me make a new mask, and now we'll do a control line. Because if I don't create a new mask, it's going to apply the same settings I did to the last local adjustment I did. And we'll just tighten up the Luma mask just a little bit so that only the sky is selected. And now let's put in some clear view. I think that looks good. Okay. Now, the only other thing is, let me look at some color renderings. Right now it's on natural. This is vibrant, vivid, portrait, portrait, portrait. I think the vibrant looks best. This is the original G9 camera profile. So if you were doing this in camera and created a JPEG, you would get this color profile. but I think I kind of like the vibrant the best. It kind of tones down the highlights a little bit and then very slight saturation. But I'm going to try and separate some of the colors here in the mountains. Like there's a little bit of uh, grays here with some red tones and then lots of yellow, right? So I'm going to go down here to the color wheel. Let's see what color we get, because sometimes your eyes deceive you. There is still a lot of red in this area. So what I'm going to do is let's not do anything with the color wheel. Maybe a better way to separate this is again with a local adjustment. So we'll make a new mask and a control point and see if I can separate this area a little more. So I'm going to make a relatively tight mask here on the chroma. Just going to bump that up very gradually. And this is a case where I do go over the plus or minus 10 that I normally try to stay in because the colors are very similar. But I think I was able to select it out pretty well there. So I'm just going to see if I can brighten those a bit. Maybe not that much, like that. And add just a little micro contrast, bring out some of the definition. And then let's do the same thing for this red area. So we'll make a new mask for reds. And I'm going to tighten up the chroma and see if I can get that particular shade of red to stand out. So I had to go all the way to 100%. And let's also just add a little bit of lumimasking because the luminance of that red is just a hair darker than the others. So there's some there and some here. Maybe this one, no. I think up in here. Yeah, right there. Certainly over here. And in the background. All right, so in this case, I'm going to just select all channels and push the vibrancy. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And I'm going to go back to my white rocks. Let me see. I'm going to just going to add one more here. Just to give it a little more separation here and there. Let's just do a linear push on the exposure. Maybe not that much. It's starting to look a little bit fake. So we'll back this off a little bit. Okay, I think I'm done. So I'm going to export this to get the full effect of all of the optical corrections, noise reduction. Let me put it into the same folder. I'm going to add a suffix, DxO9, turn off resizing, and the profile you want to set to sRGB for display on Instagram, Flickr, Facebook, whatever. 99% of what devices that people look at images are sRGB. We'll export that. And typically, if I pull this bar up here, I can get a progress bar here. So the first image, for whatever reason, takes a little bit longer to export, but typically it's about 15 to 20 seconds. And actually, we're going to stay within that margin there, and that looks good. So uh, let me turn off my filter here, and I'm going to go ahead and reset the original, and we'll compare it by setting it as the reference and compare it to my edit here. All right, so the most obvious change is the crop, right? It's just a little bit tighter. And I think this line right here is really the key difference. And then, uh, yeah, a little bit less sky as well. And I didn't dehaze or do anything with the mountains here. If anything, I probably should have reduced the contrast even a little more. But overall, I kind of like this edit. So let's just do a quick split view. And you can see quite a bit of difference in the detail, like between the water and the rock cliff. If I see if I can zoom in. Now, when I punch in this close, it looks a little bit overbaked, so I might actually even go back into post-processing and reduce that. But yeah, it's quite a bit of difference. If I just zoom into 100%, then it looks normal. And a lot of that is attributed to the DxO optics module because there's no noise, so the denoising module is not doing much work here. The optics module is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. All right, so I spent a lot of time on that picture, uh, but I think it came out really, really nice. So thank you for sending that one. And let me turn my cam. All right, let's do one more, and then I'll go to the chat section. This one is from William. I'm going to hit the F9 key to bring my panels back. And there's a list of shortcut keys right up in here. Shortcuts. And this is a floating panel, so I can have this available to look at. But again, the F9 key brings your panels in and out. So the first thing, again, we're going to apply basic preset. And I think the composition is it's not bad. The exposure is a little bit dark. So I might just push the exposure a tiny bit, but let me think about the composition. Uh, a lot of times with animals, I like to do a square crop. I don't know if I need both eyes. Maybe just right here. Let me go back to a 4 by 3. Now let's try 5 by 4. So I'm looking for possibly a diagonal. Let me try. So I have the nose, the eye. If I rotate this, I don't know if I can get a little better diagonal. And now it's a little bit unbalanced. There's still too much space over here. If I come in a little tighter. It'd be nice if the ear pointed right into the corner perfectly, but I think that works right there. Okay, let me just do a little bit of a push on the exposure. And it's just a linear push, so it's brightening everything at the same time, which is fine. Okay, maybe even, yeah, about 1.4 stops. That's pretty good. And let me go over here to the colors. I'm going to warm up the image a little bit just to give it a little bit of a morning glow, I guess. And I might exaggerate this corner a little bit more. So I think I can go to local adjustments now that I have the exposure that I want. So I've done my composition, exposure, and geometry. Next, I'm looking at the local adjustments. So maybe just a control point up here. Excuse me. And we'll exaggerate that a little more, maybe even make it a little warmer. And let's back off the chroma masking and luma, maybe down to 0 even. And we'll push the midtones a bit, tiny bit on the shadow. Okay, it's a little bit oversaturated in this case, and that's partially due to the noise. So I'm gonna just back off the vibrancy a bit and maybe even, yeah, I think that looks good. Maybe even expand this even further, just to get a little bit of a kiss of light, warm light onto the side. And now I'm gonna push these back up because I don't want too much. I want it to look kind of natural. Uh, yeah, that looks good. Okay. Um, Now let me make a new mask just for the eye. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna select right in here. We will tighten up the I selected a brush. My mistake. I want another control point. I'm gonna kind of put it on both the colors here, the sort of the dark pupil and the yellow iris, and just add some clear view here and micro contrast. Because I always like to emphasize the eyes, and typically I'll go a little bit outside of that. Maybe the nose too could use a little bit of help. All right, so let me get the loop tool and see how we're dealing with the noise and sharpening. 400% may be a bit much. Oh, we're at ISO 25,000. No wonder. I was like, gosh, we lost some detail here, but I think we're okay. How's the nose? Nose is not bad. Let me go over to the detail panel here and just increase this. See if I can extrapolate more detail. If I turn off the unsharp mask. Okay, I'm not seeing much difference there. Let me increase the radius. Okay, that's not bad. That's a little bit hot, but how about How about up here where the ear is? These fine hairs up in the ear. Okay, let me back it off a little bit. Okay, that looks good to me. All right. The only other thing I might do is I'm gonna just cool the image off just a little bit more because I put a really strong warm color up here in the corner. I'm just gonna cool it off just a tiny bit because the cat looks a little bit too yellow. I think we're done. All right, so let me export this and wait for that to finish. Oh, it's already done. So I'm gonna reset this image, do a side by side. So this is the edited image on the left, and here is the original image. So I think it's a little more dramatic with just the one eye and a little bit tighter crop and by going 5 by 4 instead of 4 by 3. And then of course I really like the light here. Now I just saw William's comment that it's a night photo walk, so actually I probably should have cooled this off instead of making it warmer, but I couldn't tell looking at the image as is if this was day or night. Being a night image, you would probably want to make this image cooler than warmer, so it'd be sort of a major shift in white balance. But aside from that, uh, without knowing that, this is what I got because I wasn't there. I didn't take the picture, right? But this is what I saw when I got the image, and I think that came out really well. So if we do a slider, we can really come in onto the fine details and just see what a great job DxO does at pulling out details where it can. Like especially on these fine hairs up in here and in the ear, I think really did a good job for an ISO 25,000 image on a Micro Four Thirds. That is pretty amazing. All right, let me go to the chat section because I spent a lot of time on the first image and see if there's any questions that I can get to here. Okay, I'm scrolling up. So Henning is here. Good to see you. And Larry says that was the Colorado River at Marble Canyon near Northrum, Arizona. Okay. It's always nice to know the I'll never remember that, but thanks for sharing that. And very cool photo, green, brown, red, blue contrast. Yep. And then Henning thinks the original cropped worked better. Okay. I assume you're talking about the canyon picture because that was a little bit early on. And Larry says, for sure, I'm so jealous, but in a positive way. Just wish I had the possibility to go there as well. Okay. Uh, Nancy says, from the province of Newfoundland and Labor Canada up on GNP. Good to see you, Anthony. Always good to see you. And Henning says, to fix problems with Microsoft Windows, just go buy a Mac. Yes, I know you won't. It's just I'm sorry, neat statement. Come my dying eyes here. I can't read. Statement. Use it all the time. Just my strange kind of humor. It's okay. It's all right. Maybe I'll buy Mac. I don't know. I can't get over my personal issues with Mac or Apple in general. It's very it just every time I think about that time 30 years ago when I went to an Apple store, just left a bad taste in my mouth that just has never gone away. So every time I look at an Apple product, my mind just goes back to that day I went to the Apple store. And they didn't call them Apple stores back then, I don't think. But and then Anthony says, seriously considering getting Photolab 9, unfortunately still with upgrade, does not have stitching capability for landscapes. Hopefully update next will add this. We can always hope. I don't think they will. It's not really their forte, uh, but they might. There's a really great free photo stitching software, and dedicated photo stitching software will always do a better job. Uh, if you want a free option, there's Picolay, Picolay, and that works pretty well for images that don't have too many. If it doesn't have to work too hard to align the images, it does a pretty good job. Uh, I'm not Picolay, Huggin, Hugin. Huggin does a really good job. Again, if it doesn't have to work too hard to align the images, if it does have to work hard, then you have to really deep dive into all the different parameters that you can set for panoramic stitching. So a lot of the heavy lifting is done by you when there's a lot of alignment errors. Uh, so it's really important to have very good, you know, uh, workflow in the field and use best practices to get good images for stitching together later. But that said, there's another excellent free software. Gosh, let me see what it's called again. It has a weird name, like APG something. APG. It's this software here, Kolar APG, or Kolar with a K, color with a K. So KOLOR Autopanic Giga 4.4. Just Google that and you can download it. And it's an excellent stitching software that's completely free now. And even with it does a better job than Photoshop, better job than Luminar, or what's the other soft? Well, there's a few other softwares that do stitching that comes with stitching. Lightroom, Photoshop being the prominent one, but this does a better job than even those. So check that out. Because it's free right now, I don't see any reason to use um, any other photo stitching software. And Henning says, I have an M1 MacBook and just ordered an M4 Pro after 4 years. Should be here. Oh, awesome. That should be a nice upgrade, right? I mean, Apple makes wonderful products. I'm not going to put any shade on the quality and performance of their products. I just have a personal problem, okay? It's not subjective at all. Subjectively, Apple is awesome, but or objectively, Apple is pretty awesome, but subjectively, I have a big problem. Um, and I'm going to see if there's any questions specifically for me. My wish list for DxO 10 for next year is to introduce stitching capabilities for landscape. Does not anyone else want to see DxO introduce these capabilities next year? Like I said, it would be nice, but I would question if it's going to be as good as the Kolar Autopanic Giga. If it is, then great. But if they introduce something like Photoshop doesn't really do that great a job, in my opinion. It does the best that you can get if it's going to be included in the software. But again, I found the Kolar Autopanic Giga to be far superior. And I'm looking down to see if there's anything here for me. How much ND value does a CPL do when using it? Can use CPL as somewhat of an ND filter. Yes, about one stop. Some are up to two stops, but typically it's between 1 and 1.5 stops ND. So it'd be like an ND 1 or 1.5. for reference, because typically ND filters start at ND2. Some polarizers can be in like a two-stop, but if you just have a simple circular polarizer, typically it's 1 to 1.5 stops, as much as two, but I haven't seen that lately. Most of them are about 1.5. Yeah, about 1.5. Of course, you can buy ND filters and circular polarizers in one filter now, but uh, and Serge says, I'm thinking about buying the teleconverter MC14 to use with my Zuiko 100 to 400 to get much more reach. Is it a good option? Okay, so I've tried that combination, and it's not bad in terms of telephoto, right? It does bring in the subject closer, and there's really not much loss of detail. The only problem I have with using teleconverter on that lens is you're going to start at like f9 for light gathering when you add that thing, and you're zoomed out to 400 millimeters, and that is the problem I have with it. Is you're already at like f6.3 or something, and then when you add the teleconverter, you're up to like f9, and that's a pretty big leap. So if you're in good light and f9 is not going to be a problem, yeah, the 1.4 teleconverter with that lens works great. But a lot of times, we're out in the mornings and evenings for wildlife, and being at f9 is really going to hurt. If you're going for uh, birding, like wildlife type shots, where you have to keep your shutter speed up to a minimum, right? I mean, you're already probably at about 1/1000th of a second because you're at 400 millimeters plus the teleconverter, you're at 500 millimeters. You really need to, image stabilization aside, that's doesn't mean anything, right? When you're at those kind of focal ranges, you have to be at 1/1000th of a second, f9. So what's your ISO going to be? So, so what you might want to do is next time you go out with your 100 to 400, set it to f9, okay, in camera, and and take some shots. Try to shoot with it like at f9, and then come back home and see if you're happy with that. And then if you're happy with that, then yeah, go ahead and get the teleconverter, and you'll be fine. But if you find that the noise is too high, your shutter speeds are too slow, or whatever, right? Because I don't know what you're shooting exactly. Maybe you can go on a tripod and shoot at 10 seconds, whatever. But generally speaking, uh, that's the approach I would take before considering it for that particular lens. Because f9 is a pretty, yeah, that's a pretty big nut to crack when it comes to taking photos of wildlife. And Henning says, yes, the final crop really worked, making the rocks a wall on the left side was a cool idea with the river floating behind it. Yeah, okay, thanks. That's kind of the feeling I got. Uh, and Larry has some feedback about the MC14 and the 100 to 400, and he likes it. Okay. Um, there's some more feedback there for you. It was a night. Oh, this is about the cat. Yeah, I checked that one. Have you had a chance to test the new white lens? No, I have not. They didn't send me one, and honestly, that's okay. It's not a lens I think I'll get. Uh, not so much because of the price. It's because that's a focal length I don't really need. I mean, 50 to 200 is a great landscape and portrait type uh, focal range, right? Landscapes, portraits. Uh, it's maybe some birding, like bird on a stick type photography, but bird in flight, 200 millimeters is not enough reach. At f2, even at f2.8, it it'll be fine for like ducks in a pond, right? Because a lot of times ducks and geese you can get pretty close, and if it's twilight or sunset, you can get some amazing shots in that focal range, right between 50 and 200. Because and I'm thinking from a wildlife perspective, in that kind of scenario, that lens would be freaking awesome. Tack sharp, wide open 2.8, and being able to zoom in and out within that range, you can get a really nice composition for a variety of subjects that are that you can get close to. But typically, when I'm doing wildlife, I'm doing birds in flight, birds on a stick, like they're way up at the top of the tree. Uh, 200 millimeters ain't going to cut it. And then if you add a 1.4 2x teleconverter, you might as well get the 300 millimeter f4, which is even costs even less. And in my opinion, is probably going to be at least as good optically, if not better. So my preferred lens is going to be the 300 f4 with a 1.4 teleconverter because of the kind of subjects that I shoot primarily. The 50 to 200 is just in a range that doesn't make sense to me. And if I want to shoot, uh, ducks and geese or whatever birds that I can get close to, I can just use my 40 to 150 kit lens. And with a little noise reduction, even though I'm at f4 or maybe f5.6, I'm more than happy with the results I get with that $99 lens that I paid $99 for it. So, yeah, getting the 50 to 200 f2.8 would just not make any sense for the kind of photography that I do. It just doesn't have enough reach for birds in flight, birds on a stick typically, and the shorter telephoto range is not very useful for me because I'm not usually shooting birds that are that close to me. Now, if I was shooting subjects, it doesn't have to be birds. It could be, plants, flowers, whatever, right? Could be there's a variety of subjects that you can get close to where that focal range makes a lot of sense. But I don't find myself using that focal range very much to begin with. And if I do, $99 is fine. I'd rather save up for the 150 to 400 that has the 1.25x built-in teleconverter, and I can add a 1.4x. Now we're talking, right? Now I can get really close. And I have tried that lens with that combination of 1.4 plus the built-in 1.25, and the sharpness is still amazing, even with that kind of reach. Yeah, it's a boatload of money, but it's worth it if you do a lot of that kind of photography, which I do. So even though I think it's worth it, I just don't have the money to do that right now. Okay, so that's my take on the 50 to 200. Fabulous lens for a lot of things, but it's just not for me. Lack of freedom. Yeah, there's a lot of ecosystem issues, right? Because once you're in the Apple world, you're kind of stuck there, right? And you have to do everything according to their terms. Okay. And Serge, good evening. I'm going to hopefully photograph the rut of deer. Okay. All right. So let's get back to photo editing. That's why many of you may be here, not to talk about lenses, right? And I'll try and get through these as quickly as I can. So let me apply basic preset and compositionally, I like the leading lines here on the ground. There's a little bit of framing right here with this building framing the subject. And then we have some very interesting elements here with bicycles. So this gives context of the kind of location this is, right? It's a very free, open, and sort of fun environment. Even though the lighting is a little bit gloomy, the atmosphere is very light. So what I might do is just crop out some of this wall here. We don't need all of that. Maybe crop out this person and then just focus right in here. So we might be able to keep the 4:3 aspect ratio. And then let me see if I can get a line and then rule of thirds. She's sitting right here on the rule of thirds. We have a leading line here. And we have a blank space here. Okay. Let me try a 5 by 4. No, maybe this is a 3 by 2. Sorry, 3 by 2 crop. That looks a little tight. I'm not used to 3 by 2 because I shoot 4 by 3 a lot. See if we can do the same thing. And let's bring her feet right near the bottom of the frame. Okay. All right, that looks good. Now, exposure-wise, we're pretty good. We just need to do a few local adjustments, maybe brighten her up a little bit. And the bicycles, I think, are nice. And then I want to bring out some of the details here because I like the repeating patterns of the beams here. So I'm just going to use local adjustments. Actually, I can use the AI selection tool for the person. I'm just going to use the rectangle tool. This is still pretty reliable. Uh, with the previous driver. It's the subject selection. Like if I select people, cat, eyes, hair, whatever, that's when I get kind of the crashes. But using the rectangle tool is pretty reliable. And you can see it does really a good job, right? So let me just brighten her up, maybe about a half a stop, so she stands out just a little bit more, and maybe give her a little more warmth as well. And I think that's good. Okay. Now, I'm going to use a control point to deal with maybe these beams, and I'll come back to the bicycles. So I'm going to put the control points just on these beams, and we'll adjust these. Oops. We'll adjust these geometrically. There's one here. Okay. What I want here is maybe some contrast. I'm going to push the highlights up, which there's none. Let's try the midtones. Nothing happening. There we go. Now a little push on the shadows. And again, I'm trying to keep a straight line. So now I'm going to just go as far as I can there. Leave that at 0. About one more here. And what I might do here is actually cool that off a bit because it is in the shade. Okay. And when I'm adjusting white balance, I try to stay within 500 Kelvin of any local adjustments so that we don't see any major shifts. Again, I try to make it look natural and not overbaked. Okay, so I have the repeating lines here. We have the leading line here. We have the subject a little brighter. And then now we're just going to work on some of the other elements here. Not sure what to do with these bicycles. This red bicycle kind of accents the red lettering in her purse or bag there. So I think I'll just accentuate that one bicycle. And I'll just use a control point. Actually, I may be able to use the AI selection tool for just the red. I'm going to use the mouse pointer version. And actually, it's okay. I guess we'll just select the whole bike. Let's select the red color tone and just push that a little bit and give it a little boost on luminance. There, I think that's a nice balance between the bicycle and her bag. I could even brighten her bag a bit, but I'm not going to do that. Ah, well, maybe just a little bit. So let me select the red lettering in her bag. Oh, don't crash. All right, let me try. So I'll select her purse, and then we'll just push the reds a little bit. There. Okay. Okay, I think that's a nice compliment there. There's a little bit of a green back there. Okay, the street, let me see if I can add a little texture and just a little brightness right around her as well. So I'm going to use a control point and just put this right around her. We're going to tighten up the chroma so it doesn't select her too much, and the luma. And that looks like a nice mask. And let's just do a linear push like that. Add a little bit of warmth and some micro contrast for texture. Maybe one more up here. Back that off a little. I just noticed there's some leaves in here too. That's a nice little accent of reds and yellows there. We could do another one, and we will tighten up the chroma in this case, and the luma. And let's just warm up those leaves a little bit. And maybe just brighten them a tiny bit. Give a little micro contrast, push the highlights a bit, midtones. All right, not bad. Let's just call it there. So let me export that. And then we'll compare it when it's done. I'm just checking this because when it's done, it'll show up in here as an output. So we'll reset and set this as a reference, and then F9. All right, so there's the original image on the right. Pretty wide shot. There's not much going on over here on the left side, so I took all that out. And I just wanted to keep the more interesting elements with a few accents of reds and yellows. And then, of course, brightening the subject and then sort of the ground around her as well. And I think that came out pretty good. Let me get my big head out of the way. So if we do just a slider view, yeah, this is just kind of a wide street shot, but I think this is a little bit more interesting. It really puts an emphasis on her in the frame. And I didn't want to lose the bicycles because this to me was part of the story, so to speak, uh, of the environment that she's in. I think it really adds a lot to it. So I think that came out pretty good. All right, and the next one, let's see, we have one here from Simon. Wow, okay, another really nice vertical. Just need to straighten the horizon a tiny bit. So let me apply basic preset, and I can just use the horizon tool here. So I have to zoom in. I'll just drag that there. I could eyeball it, but I think I'll just use the tool. All right, that's better. Now, I feel like the composition here is very intentional to have a lot of this negative space. It almost works for me, not quite, but I'm going to try and maintain this composition as is. I don't think I need to do anything. It's maybe try to frame it in the center though. Let's see if that helps. Just framing in the center. I think that's a little better. And then all I have to do is really just add a little bit of tone to the sky, darken the water and brighten the sails a bit, and I think we're done. So I just do that with, see if I can select the sails with just the mouse. I can just click over here. That's good. I'm just gonna just do a linear push there. Maybe add a little micro contrast so we can see some textures. That's good. And then the boat, let's see if I select the hull and the cabin area, let's just give that some micro contrast and maybe a little bit of saturation just to make it stand out a bit. Okay, and then the water, let's make a new mask. The water, I'll just kind of get in there. That's fine. I'm just going to add some clear view, maybe push the speculars a bit, a little bit on the midtones, because the boat is very dark, relatively speaking. So I want the water to separate from the boat a little bit in this case, because normally I make the water dark, right? But because the boat is very dark, I'm going to try and just brighten the water and give it a little bit of separation, maybe some, let me try pushing the contrast and then the midtones. Okay, that looks good. And then the sky, um, let me do just a control line in this case. And we're going to tighten up the chroma mask so we're only selecting the blues. And I'm going to actually, I want this top of the sky to be a bit darker. So let me stretch this out a bit more. Hmm, maybe right about there. Let's add some clear view. Stretch it down a bit more. And then globally, I'm just going to push the exposure just a little bit this way, just a little bit brighter, because it's a very bright day. So I want the image to kind of reflect that. And I think I'm done. So let's export that. Done. There. Let's reset and compare. All right. Again, I think this came out really nice. Composition-wise, I do like the negative space in this case. Um, it does work for this particular composition. I might have cut off even a little bit more on the bottom. I like this little bitty little wave right here. So overall, that looks great. Maybe accent the highlights here a little more as well on a local adjustment. But other than that, I think this worked out pretty well. And then if we do a slider to look at some of the fine details, there's the before. So it's a little off center, and now it's centered. And if we look at the fine details, because I did some work on the mask, right? Or the sails, I should say. You can see pretty dramatic difference in the sails. I think that came out really, really nice. Very, very sharp image with the optics module. As you can see, that's a little bit soft here, right? But then with the optics module, it really cleaned it up nicely. All right, very good. Very nice image. All right, Surge here with the Kingfisher. This is awesome. Uh, let's let's crop. I don't have any of this particular breed of Kingfisher in my area. But let's just do a square crop on this one and come in really tight. We'll leave a little room on the left side because he's kind of looking into the frame. And let's just adjust it so there's just the perfect amount of twigs. And we'll do a similar composition to the sailboat that we just saw, where we're leaving a lot of negative space here on the top. Maybe crop out that one little branch right there. All right, very good. I might brush this little branch out right here just to give the kingfisher a little more room. And then for birding, I always do, you know, eyes, beaks, and talons. I like those to stand out. And then I work on the feather details separately. Exposure-wise, we're good. So I'm just going to use some control points here. So let's start with the eyes and bring up the shadows. There is actually a little color in this eye. Let me see if I can get the control point right on the color or the iris. Bring that up a bit more. Crank up the clear view and micro contrast. I think that's about all I can do without it making it look like he has glowing eyes. And then we'll do a new control point for the beak. I can probably use the AI for that. Let me see if no, not really. Let me try the rectangle tool. If I just select the beak. Okay, that works. And I'm going to do the same thing. So micro contrast and clear view. And then let's push the highlights and midtones a bit to give it some more specularity. Okay, good. And then we'll do another one for the talons. Uh, maybe just a rectangle tool for that too. Let's see. No, that's not working too well. So I can try the pointer tool. That's selecting the whole bird, so I don't want that. I'll just use a control point on this side. And we'll tighten up the chroma mask. Okay, so let's enhance the color a bit. So push the vibrancy, go with some micro contrast, and maybe a slight push on the highlights. All right, awesome. Now the feather detail is going to be a little rough because I'm cropped in pretty heavily, and we're at a relatively high ISO at 1200. So let me look at the loop tool and see how we're doing with that. let me crop into 400% and see if I can tweak this detail a bit. So I'm going to go to the detail panel. Let's increase the lens sharpening and extract details. Let's just crank that all the way up. And then unsharp mask. Let's work on the radius a bit and a little bit more there. Let's see how we're doing down in here. Okay, it's a little bit too crispy. So let me back this off. I think I have the radius about right. I just need to back this off a bit. All right, I think that's good enough for sharpening. And then let me amplify. I think I'll make the background a little bit darker and try and brighten the bird up a bit. So let me go back to my local adjustments and we'll create a new mask. And if I recall, this worked pretty well. Just selecting it here and we'll add this in. And let's just maybe a half a stop again. Let's actually do, yeah, let's do a full stop and then go back to the global and then pull it down full stop. Oh, no, I'm getting a little bit of haloing. So that's not going to work. So let's just do about half a stop here. Add a little vibrancy. And then let's add a vignette. So let me make a new mask with a control point, and I'm going to put the vignette around the bird. So using a control point, turning the chroma and lumen to 0, then inverting it, and then just pull in. Let's just do a linear pull. Pull the blacks in a bit, the shadows. Maybe not the. Let me reset the tones. Let me just do it this way. Maybe make this a little smaller. Move it over up here. And let's add a little bit of warmth and some more greens. Where are we at? We're at 51. Let's go to 56. Okay, and then globally, let's see vibrant. And no, I think natural looks best. What about these portrait ones? No. Yeah, I think the natural look best. But I'm going to warm up the image just a bit to taste. Right there, about 57. Okay, now my only concern is I'm getting a little bit of an artifact here, right here. So what I might have to do, I forget which mask it was. It's this one. I'm going to see if I can erase some of that. Uh, oops. So I'm going to just feather in here. Where's my flow? Let me crank this all the way up. Okay, that helped a little bit, but I'm still not quite there yet. So what mask is causing that? Could be this one. All right, that's better. Okay. I don't really see any haloing anywhere else. Oh, this one, let me see if I can just get rid of this one little thing here. I'm gonna try the healing brush, but I mean the repair brush, but I may try the clone. Let's try that one. We'll move this a little bit tighter on the feathering. Let's see what a clone looks like. Yeah, clone looks better. Okay. All right, let's export this. Everything looks good here. And then when that's done, do a quick check here. Reset as an image as reference. All right, so obviously is you know, that's as close as you could get to the bird, right? uh, so I had to crop in quite a bit, and I think we came out okay. There was a lot of detail loss for a couple of reasons, mainly because of the distance. I'm cropped into probably well less than 1 megapixel on this bird overall. I would say half a megapixel worth of data here. Uh, but given that, I think it came out pretty good. So if we do the slider and really punch in, we can look at some of the finer details here. So it's a little bit off there, but that's just a very soft image, straight out of camera, of course, but then applying, the optics module and everything else. I think we did a pretty good job, at least getting rid of the noise and pulling out some of the contrast and color in the bird to help give it definition, because there's not really any fine detail there for us to extrapolate based on the original, right? Because the original looks a tiny bit soft. And I think that's just the lens. I didn't look at what lens you were using. This is the 100 to 400, zoomed all the way to 400 wide open with a higher ISO, and your shutter speed's a little bit low. I would have probably shot it slightly higher. I get why you went with 1/800. That's not bad. Maybe you're okay there. But I think overall, really, really nice result. Hey, awesome, awesome shot there, Serge. I'm really happy you got a kingfisher. I would love to get a kingfisher of that particular breed, but hasn't happened yet. So let's go ahead and did I apply preset? Did I apply the where's the original image? I did apply the preset. So, all right, I was just checking, make sure I got the optics module in, because the optics module can make quite a bit of difference. All right, beautiful landscape. Um, from high up off in the mountains here. Let me just apply the basic preset, and I'm going to just push the exposure just to see what we have in there. And yeah, there's a lot of interesting things. I love the clouds here. Compositionally, I think we can cut off most of the top of this and just focus right in here. So I'm going to leave the exposure that way for now. But let's try a super wide 16 by 7. Just come in like that. Yeah, that's perfect. Um, and yeah, let's back this off to about just 2 stops there. Well, maybe if we apply some smart lighting and probably won't have to push the exposure that much. And then I feel like there's some minor barrel distortion though. It just feels a little bit off, but maybe not. It's just because the way this line bows right here. It just feels like, but I can't see the whole horizon. But I feel like I got some minor bowing, so I'm just gonna, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to just manually. Do I have the lens information in here? Oh, it's a DJI Air. What the heck is that? This must be a drone shot. Uh, if I turn off this, I'm going to turn off the distortion correction. Well, I don't know. I'll leave it. I'll leave it the way it is. Okay. Let's add a little drama to the clouds here. Just as if they were in the sky. I can just do control points for this. I just have to make sure the chroma is a little bit tighter so that we're only selecting the cloud area. Maybe a slight push on the luma as well. All right. There, that looks good. And a tiny bit of micro contrast. Maybe push the highlights a bit. And just a touch of warmth. And maybe a tiny, well, no, the tint looks about right. Just need a little more warmth. Okay, and then let's use a control line for the sky. I'll put this up here. I'm going to back off the chroma a bit. I want to make sure I include blues and yellows together. A little bit on the luma. I'm just going to pull the highlight a tiny bit. Let's try some clear view, micro contrast. just to bring out sort of the haziness of that sky. And you can make my straight line here. All right, that looks good. Now let me go back over here and I'm just going to give a little push. Maybe there, go back to my local, go back to sky again. And I'm going to back off the vibrancy. Well, what do we have in there? We have a little bit of blue here, but mostly yellows. So I'm going to just focus on the oranges and yellows. So I'm going to stretch this out a bit here and here and just desaturate that a bit. And then I'm going to go to the blues and saturate those a bit more. Let me stretch that out. I wonder if I can erase a little bit of that. Let me see. Yeah, it does work. All right. So let me feather this. I'm going to drop the flow way down. Opacity 30/30. Maximum feathering. And select that control line. Oops. I need the brush. And I'm just going to subtract some of the blues that I added. How far does this go down? To about there? That's fine. Let me just adjust this a little bit. Okay, and then a new control line down here for the shadows. Basically what I want is just maybe some, I don't want it to be that bright down in there, but I do want to make sure that we can still see that there's a town down there. All right, I think I'm done. So let me export that. And then let's compare side by side. Let's do a top and bottom. So there's the new edit with the crop, and here's the original. And maybe a slider would be a better way to go. Oops. Let me go back to, where's my slider? There it is. Sometimes I have to hit the F9 key to get the slider back in. So there's the original. So if we just look at the crop that I did, I don't think I cropped anything out that we need. And if I zoom in, I think did a really good job. And let's just check some of the finer details. Yeah, that looks beautiful. This will print out large very, very nicely, I think. Um, really wonderful image. Okay, let's see. I have a bookshelf here. Not a bookshelf, I'm sorry. Some shelving in a store. What is this stuff? Spices and drinks? and we're at ISO 10,000 at f14. Ooh, I think you can get away with f14 on a Z6 though, without diffraction issues. I'm just thinking, I'm thinking my gear head is just came out, but okay. Uh, let's apply a basic preset. I love all the different colors in there. I'm going to apply a perspective correction here. Let's see if the auto works. Yeah, very nice. And then compositionally, I'm wondering if I don't think I need this or this little map rack and chair. I'm going to concentrate right in here. So let me just stick with the original aspect ratio, but I may have to tighten that up a bit and see if I can use any lines here. I really like the variety though. Let me try a 4x3. And when I think about spaces like this, interiors, I try to get uh, some symmetry of uh, two angles. So in this case, we have a 90-degree angle with the wall and with the two walls. But because of the perspective that you took this from, it's hard to get that particular to get the kind of it's hard to describe, but to get the kind of look that I like when I do interiors. And let's see how that looks. It's a tough call. It's almost like it might be better to just take the center area. No, the perspective is not right. And what I mean is like if you look inside the the shelving here, I have an angle on this side, but no angle on this side. So it's this wall is a little bit to my right, and then going over to this wall here, we're seeing the same angle, right? So if you were to go back to the scene, basically I would move over to the right. I would step to the right a little bit so I had perfectly square area right in here rather than sort of this little bit of perspective distortion, not distortion, but the perspective that you have on this wall is not quite right. You're not parallel with it. That would have made a big difference for me anyway, when I'm working with this composition. But let me just try and come in and just focus on the products and decide on where I want to cut it off. I think I'll just go with this. I don't quite need that. I think I'll just go with this. But yeah, this geometry, like you're perfectly square right here. So if you'd have moved over to the right just a little bit, it'd have been perfect for me if I were taking the shot. All right, now let's amplify some of the colors. Let's try vibrant. Okay, I like vibrant, and let's just let's just do a vibrancy, and then I'm going to cool it off a bit because it's a little bit warm. Cool it off just a little bit there. Where were we at? 47. Let's try 44. Yeah, right. there. And I'm going to tilt the horizon just a tiny bit. It feels just a little bit off. And then I'm just gonna spot hit some of the highlights here, or where I want a little bit more highlight, like this, and some clear view. It's like anywhere where there's kind of a clear glass bottle. So that's that. That's really the only two. Okay, let's make a new mask. Well, let me go back to this one. Maybe these bottles too. Yeah, right in here. All right, so we have a new mask here. Uh, let's just do a little bit of a push on the shadows overall. I'm going to select one of the more shadowy areas, tighten up the luma. And let's just do just a linear push. And then we'll try pushing the highlights a bit. Midtones, shadow. Add some clear view, micro contrast. And I think globally I could do with a little micro contrast. Okay, let me look at my loop tool and some of the finer details. So there's still a tiny bit of softness here in certain parts of the image. Try and fix some of that with sharpening. Okay, so almost, let me back this off. I'm getting a tiny bit of halo. And then we'll push the detail slider, intensify the lens sharpening. Okay, much better. Much better. Maybe I can turn this off. No, let's leave that on, but I'm gonna back this off a bit. Okay, now there's still a little bit more noise than I'd like coming through, so let's do just a little more. Just a little bit more, maybe about 50. And under the advanced, okay, we'll leave that. I think that works. But I think that's about the best I can do with the noise. Yeah, that's not making much difference. We'll leave that there. All right, let's export this. and we'll compare. Okay, so here's the original on the right, and yeah, I just got rid of all these elements that I don't think add anything to, this is sort of interesting having these tortillas or whatever they are, these bags. Uh, but I just wanted to focus on the color and the repeating patterns that we have in the composition, and then amplify the colors and contrast so that they pop a little more. So if we do a slider, here's the original, and let's go in really tight and see how we did with the details. Yeah, I think it did a fantastic job, especially like these bottles down in here. But that came out amazing. You can almost read the lettering and everything now. So, okay, awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Ooh, an infrared here. Who's this from? This is from oh, the name is not there. I think this is from Henning. So now DxO is not really ideal for infrared photography editing. You really need to have a channel mixer like in Photoshop. But I found kind of a workaround that works pretty well. But let's start with a basic preset, and let's see if we can straighten the horizon a bit. I'll just use the line tool again. We'll just eyeball it right in here and right here. Just a little bit to the left. Actually, that looks about right. And then let me go right to, well, let me think about the composition again. I kind of like this foliage here in the front. Definitely have some good water and sky. Wow, you did this with an OM5 and a 17-1/8. That's amazing. That's on a great lens for infrared. I don't see any hot spots or anything. I'm gonna have to take my 17 millimeter out for infrared photography. This is amazing. Um, and what is this? This is a pretty fast. Is this a converted infrared camera? Maybe that's what it is. This is a converted camera because looking at the shutter speed, there's no way you could get 1/400th of a second with a regular Bayer sensor. You'd have to remove the array. So let me know, Henning, if this is a converted infrared camera. I'm curious. I'm pretty sure it has to be because these exposure settings just make no sense at all if you're using an infrared filter, and that would explain why it's so sharp. But still, I'm going to try my 17 because I don't see any hot spots. But let me try a 16 by 7 and try and keep some of this foreground. I kind of like that. Maybe a 16 by 9. So I like the clouds too. And I'm gonna center that kind of gazebo in the middle, maybe. No, that's not balanced too well because the clouds are pretty dominant here. So I'm gonna center on the cloud. I wish there was less foliage on the right side because it's still a bit off. But that's fine. All right, now let's go to the color wheel, and I'm just going to rotate this all the way around 180 degrees. And I'm going to set my white balance to the trees so that we get a nice blue sky. And let's go to local adjustments and make the water. I think we can do a fairly tight control point. Oops. And let's add some clear view. Push the highlights. And let's see, micro contrast a little bit. No, that doesn't look too good. Just a touch. And then we'll do one for the sky. Relatively tight. We'll move this up here. Tighten up the chroma a bit. And the luma. And clear view. Micro contrast. All right. Okay, I'm gonna mess with the colors a little bit more. I wonder if I can, these are kind of yellows. Saturate that a bit more. Maybe even shift them a tiny bit. Like so. And then the blues, you can make it more natural or more teal. I'm gonna go for a little more natural on the blue. I'm gonna go back to the global. I'm just gonna move this a little bit left and right or up and down. See if I can just tweak that a tiny bit. Back to my oranges. And the luminance down. Just to create some separation. And globally, let's see what some global micro or DX Clearview does and micro contrast and contrast. Not quite that much. Yeah, I don't need these. I'll just use the sliders here. Smart lighting, that's nice. I like that, what it did automatically. Go back to the colors and tweak them just a bit more. No, I think this is good, but the white balance, I don't know. If I go a little warmer, I can try and set it again. I don't think this is going to help me much, though. Yeah, I don't like that red. I think right there is good. And again, this is all very, very subjective. But there is some nice separate, a little bit of more separation here. I might be able to bring out. Okay. The oranges are a bit too strong now. Let me just back that off. And then I will do a couple of more control point adjustments. So I'm seeing just a tiny bit. And I'm going to tighten up the luma and chroma. I just want to amplify some of the trees in the foreground, maybe desaturate a tiny bit as well. We have a bit of pull. We get rid of this one. All right, and then coming back to the water, I'm going to back off this clear view a bit. All right, I think I'll call it there. Now, Henning sent in his edit. I haven't looked at it yet, so we'll see what he did compared to what I did. It'll be interesting. Oh, wow. It is a converted camera. Okay. I thought so. No wonder it's so crisp. I don't get this good a result with my infrared photography, at least not yet. Um, okay, so let's reset it and do a side by side. So, I think the 16 by 9 crop works, and I like the foreground. I would have moved over again a little bit more to the right so I could balance the front with the back so that there's just an even amount of foreground with the background. But uh, other than that, I think the 16 by 9 crop is ideal for this composition. And if we check the details, um, that's the before with no color corrections. And that's the after. And what I try to do is I noticed that these trees were a little bit less color, like this one, and this one, than the background trees. So I thought that looked pretty good. And when we punch in, I mean, it's just amazing how sharp this camera is. Being a converted camera and eliminate a lot of the noise that you can see. Like, look at the details that came out of these trees compared to this. It's just amazing. Um, what DxO did. And we'll look at your edit here after I finish the rest of these, Henning. So let's see. We have a squirrel. Some of these are from last week actually, because I couldn't get to them. But this one will be pretty straightforward. I think compositionally we're okay. We just have to brighten the squirrel a bit and emphasize some of the tones in the tree here. So we'll apply basic preset and we can just do some local adjustments. So we'll do the eyes. See if I can bring that out a bit more. And then we'll make a new one, control point, maybe, or a new mask, I should say. Let's do a rectangle and see if I can get that squirrel. Yep. And we'll just brighten that a bit and give him a little vibrancy. tiny bit of micro contrast maybe. Okay, and then let's make a new mask for the tree. I don't know if the pointer will get that or not. Let's see. Or the rec. Let's try the pointer. Yeah, the pointer got it. That's good. And I'm just going to pull it down a bit with the blacks first, a little bit in the shadows, not too much. And a little push here and here. Let's pull back the contrast a bit on that, the micro contrast. I don't want it to be sharper than the squirrel. And then the background, I'm not sure there's much I can do here. If I select it, this, let me make a new mask. I can select it. Helps a little bit. I don't want to do it too much, otherwise I might get some haloing. But let's warm it up. What if I give it crazy warmth? Yeah, that's looking a little bit unnatural. So let's stop about there. And going back to my tree, let me back off some of the greens. Oops, we need to go the other way. Oh God, I'm still on the sky. I'm sorry. Hold on. That's the mask that I wanted, this one. And then we'll push the reds a bit. All right, and go back to the eye. A little bit too much shadow push. All right, and then I'm going to do a vignette, the control point, just right around the squirrel here. Turn our chroma and luma all the way down, invert it, and just pull the exposure. About that much, and I'll do a slight global pull on the exposure. Okay, I think I'm done. One more thing I might do, just do a control point on the ear. Just give it a little backlighting. All right, let's export that. All right, so the composition is pretty good as it is. I'm not sure what can be done over here. I could have cropped it so that this wasn't in there, so that's one option. And then he'd be looking into the frame a little more, but then it'd be almost a square crop, which might be okay. But other than that, I think the edit came out pretty good. We emphasized the squirrel, we darkened the tree, tempered the highlights a bit, and then emphasized some of the greens and reds to kind of complement each other for the framing. And then if we do a slider, we can see, the kind of job it did on the detail. So if we come in really tight, I think it did really an amazing job again, as usual. And I think a little kiss of light here on the ear helps sort of give the illusion of a little bit of backlighting. But yeah, look at all the hairs that came out with the AI editing. It really does an amazing, amazing job. See how there's hardly any hairs here because they're being clipped by the highlights? But then using the AI selection tool, it feathers the AI selection very, very nicely for fine hairs. And this works great for portraits and things too, when you have stray hairs and everything running around. So I think that came out great. All right, let's do the next one, and then I'll get to the chat section. Um, okay, I'm gonna just apply basic preset first, and then let me go and just push the exposure and see if there's anything here interesting in the shadows. The name here, these colors here are nice. The colors in the containers. So this is what's drawing my attention are all the colors in the containers, and then this blue ship, which it's not obvious, right, from here. So the question is, how much do I shift the white balance? Because this is white, whatever this crane is. So if there's a lot of tungsten lighting coming from different places. The water here's got, man, there's so many different white balances going on at the same time because of all the different kinds of lighting. Because we have probably LED lighting back here, then we have some halogen lighting somewhere coming up here, making this very warm light. These are also obviously warm lights here. And then lots of color casting from all the different colors in the scene. Uh, let me look at the perspective. That doesn't really help much. I'm just going to tilt it. Let me look at this again. Yeah, that's not helping. I think we're perfectly level. It's always hard to tell with ships in the water because, ships tilt and shift relative to the horizon. Boy, this is a tough one compositionally. 'Cause I don't like this beam or whatever this overhang is. Like, I think you're probably on another boat or shooting from your car, possibly, because I think this is a mirror. Yeah, I've done this a million times myself. I've gotten the frame of my car and mirror in the frame, and it's really hard to compose it from there. Well, let's see what we can do. Um, we'll stay with a 4:3 crop and try and minimize. I think we can skip the containers here. Let's just work with this. I think that's good enough. I'm missing the crane a little bit up here because that's really an interesting thing, but we have some nice, nice colors everywhere. I'm just going to do a slight tilt now this way. I just want this one line straight here. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to get this part of the crane in the image. I wonder, yeah, we'll get rid of that. I'll just go right here. And I'm just going to concentrate on the colors inside the containers. or on the containers. So let me see what's up in here. Those look almost yellow, but that might be due to the lighting. They may be gray, but I want to bring those out a bit. So let's push that a bit, and we're going to tighten up the Luma mask a little bit. Oh, no, let's just make this smaller. Okay, I like that. Can we do that here? We can do that here. Do that here. I'm just going to spread the light around in a very uneven fashion where it kind of makes sense. Maybe in here, right here, a little smaller, right here, a little smaller, and then I think all of these areas right in here. Okay, how about the front? Oh, I'll need a different mask for that. Okay, and I'm going to shift the global white balance just to be a little cooler. Okay, that looks good. And I'm going to temper the highlights on the ship itself. So we can do that with just a couple of control points, a little tighter Luma. Like that. And then the containers, I'm definitely going to have to cool these off. So I'm going to do a relatively tight chroma mask. We'll start with the reds because they're kind of the most dominant looking color to me. And let's see if I can brighten those up a bit and give them a little more saturation and cool them off just a little bit more. And I'm going to work with the blues now. So let me start selecting the blues. A little bit there. Okay, and then let's spot hit some of the yellows. Like let's see what this does. Maybe this one. Back off from the reds. Okay. Wow, this is harder than it looks. So am I getting what I want? Let me do a little push and some more shadows now. A little tighter on the Luma. Yeah, the boat's going to need its own, control points. So let's do that. And just again, tighten up the luma a bit. See if I can push it a little bit more. Move this down. Okay. Get rid of that. Just want to emphasize sort of the. All right. Okay. Now let's go to the global and just do maybe a little clear view, slight pull on the blacks, a little bit of a push in the midtones, like that. I'm going to bring in the loop tool and just see how we're doing with the noise and the fine details. What are we at? We're at ISO 3200, but this is really low light, so a little bit of micro contrast, but then let's bring out a little more detail like that. Let's go to about 50 on the noise. That looks good. It's pretty good. All right. I really like the full frame better, but I don't like the fact that we have this. I guess this is the roof of the car with the mirror. And let me check the noise again. Yep, that's everything I wanted. Good detail there. All right, let's export that. Yeah, let's reset. All right, so here's the original on the right. I mean, I really like this composition better. It's just I don't know if it made sense for me to cut this out or not. Maybe I should have left this in there so I can keep this composition right in here. I mean, it is what it is, right? But that said, I really just wanted to concentrate on the containers here. So I probably could have cropped in a bit tighter, like less water. Let me let me try. Let me try that. Uh, if I come in all the way over this way, no, I think the way I had it, the original way is fine. So Let's do a slider view and just check some of the fine details. So I'll need to move this up. So I think, again, we did a pretty good job of recovering the low light details, especially here on the front. This is not low light anymore because there's a lot of light on it, but we did get a lot of the details back, I think, or at least killed a lot of the noise. Like right up in here. That looks really good. Now we can see the name of the ship very clearly. And then all of the speculars and everything I thought was fine to leave in, but I wanted to emphasize the light here a little bit and then along the bottom of the hull. Because in this image you can't see the name at all. But at least here now you can see the name without over brightening it, right? And still keeping this very strong shadow. So I think this works pretty well. All right, let me go to, let me see what's come in since then. I think someone said they had sent in their edits. Let me check those. So there's one from Paul, and there's 3 new images. It looks like I'll have to wait for next week. There's a dog, and oh, there's an edit from one. Let me download that. This one from Gord. Yeah, Gord and John, I'll have to do those next week. Okay. So here is, let's set this as the reference. Here's the edit of the young lady. It's very similar, but this is a selective color type edit, right? Where you just made the subject in color and the rest black and white. So that's a very interesting creative choice. I kind of went with a more traditional edit, uh, but I like what you did over here. That's pretty cool. So yeah, interesting. Okay. And then let's see. Someone else sent their. This is Paul's edit, I think. So Paul went with the square crop. Yeah, and I mentioned that. I was thinking a square crop might have worked better, but I think I like the processing I did over here a little better. But with the tree and the squirrel, I just like the tree being darker because right here it's a little bit flat, right? Between the background, the tree, and the squirrel, it's a little bit flat to me. So I just created more contrast in the more macro sense, right? Not macro, but in a more global sense. There's more macro or a more God, what's wrong with me? There's more contrast overall in the scene. And there's a little bit of masking problem down here also, I think, that you have on yours. So this is very, very likely is because you did a geometry correction after you did your editing. And I mentioned that in the beginning. Make sure you get all of your geometry corrections done first before you do any kind of editing, because then you run into things like this. But okay, very nice. And then I think there was one more, was Henning. Well, a couple more potentially. Uh, Let me cancel that. I'm going to move these into here. So this was Henning's edit, and this was my edit, I believe. So yeah, Henning kept the entire frame. Uh, which is fine. I just don't think all of this up here is necessary in particular, all this sky. All we really need is right in here. And maybe a split view might be a more interesting way to look at this. So I see, oh, wow. Henning's edit's very, very different from mine, right? Mine, I kept very strong blues and then desaturated the yellows and oranges, whereas if you look at Henning's, the blues are a little bit more desaturated, but then there's a big punch on the oranges or pinks in this case. So very, very different edit. Uh, and I did a little extra work to separate like this tree from the background trees. Because if you look at my tree, you can see there's a nice separation here, which is very subtle in the raw image, but I amplified that here in my edit. So yeah, very interesting. Okay, and then was there anything else, or is that it? Oh, this one. So we'll make that as the reference. This is from Mike, and we'll compare that to where was mine? This one. Very similar edit. Uh, Mike went with more, kept the foreground a little bit brighter. What if we do it top to bottom? Whereas I tapered off the brightness over here. And Mike's composition is, I think that's a 16 by 9. I went with 16 by 7, just a little wider. I think the wider works better. But this down here is very subjective in terms of the, and I'm not even sure if this is the same picture because there's a lot of mountain over here that I didn't have in mind. I don't think I cropped mine that tight. Let me see. If I go to, where's, let me go back to the original raw image. Here's the original raw. Yeah, my image is very different because I don't have, yeah, these are two different pictures, but similar enough in exposure and scene. But yeah, I didn't edit the exact same picture you did, it looks like. Okay. But there's a comparison between the two edits. Very similar editing, but you went a little bit stronger with the shadows over here. It's really the only difference that I can see. But the sky, very similar editing there, and good work on the cloud. Everything looks good. All right, let me check the chat section. I'm going to delete that and then. And Henning says, your edit's amazing. The crop works perfectly as well. Oh, thank you, Henning. I appreciate that. And Cord says, wow. And you're still waiting for DxO to release the lens correction for your R7 and 6. Yeah, it'll come. Sigma, they're pretty good at getting those in. And and yeah, you have problems with editing in Photolab, but no problems in Lightroom. So yeah, Lightroom is actually a better editor for with Photoshop for infrared because of the channel mixing capability. Whereas in Photolab, you have to kind of rotate that color wheel 180 degrees, but that does all the colors at once. With the channel mixer, you can do reds and blues independently and then adjust those, the strength and weaknesses of those independently. So uh, you can certainly get great results with Photolab, as you've seen. I think that was a pretty decent edit, but it's not quite as flexible as say Photoshop because of the channel mixing capability. And Simon says, "Thanks, Rob. I haven't done my edit yet. I like what you did with it." Oh, okay, great. And John says, "This is the same lens that you thought was a tad soft on an exterior last week." Yeah, it is. It does feel a little soft. What lens is that? I can't remember now. I don't know why, but that lens is not performing as I would expect. Let me try and find that image of yours. It was with the bottles and things, right? So what lens is this? The Viltrox 23 1.4. Yeah, I don't get that. This lens is really sharp. I haven't shot with it that much, but the few images I got from it, because I have this lens right here, the Viltrox 23. This is for my Fujifilm, and it resolves that 40 megapixels really nicely. Maybe I'll have to take this out and shoot with it a bit more. But I believe this is the lens you have, right? The the 23 1.4 for from Viltrox with the red C on the side, whatever that means. I totally don't get. I'll look into it this week or this weekend. I'll take some pictures with this on my Fujifilm, which has the 40 megapixel sensor, and see what I can do. Because again, your image of the bottles here, I'm seeing some. I just don't feel like this should be sharper. It's just not sharp anywhere in the frame in particular. I mean, this is a 10,000 ISO image, so that it's a little bit unfair. But yeah, you're right, John. I don't know what to tell you. Um, Simon says the Kingfisher looks great, and thank you so much. So let me just say, thanks everyone for sending your images in. I hope you picked up a few ideas for your own editing. And if you want to support the work that I do here, you can use my affiliate links to purchase DxO. And if you're already a DxO user, you can become a member for 99 cents a month to help support these weekly live streams or make a donation. Anything helps, and subscribe, click the like button, share this with other viewers. Um, the more people we can get here doing this, the better, right? I remember I had so many people at one time that I had to limit my edits to 5 minutes each. Bang, 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 get through them really quickly. Uh, and some people like that format better, right? So maybe I'll do a separate stream and just call it a rapid fire edit one day and see what happens. Um, but I feel like the way I do it now is more educational and more useful, right? Because if I just fly through all the edits, because honestly, these 10 or 12 images that I edited today, if I wasn't doing a live stream, I could have done all of them probably in about 30 minutes, right? Just spending like 5, 10 minutes a piece at most. I probably could have got them done in 15 or 20 minutes if I didn't have to like just think out loud and think about it. And if I was the one that actually took the picture, it'd have been a lot easier to compose, right? Get the composition that I wanted if it wasn't already the way I wanted it straight out of camera. But a lot of landscapes I do crop 16 by 7, 16, you know. Anyhow, um, let me know in the comments if you want me to try and do a rapid fire editing session once, because I can get through them really fast, uh, on my own without having to, try and explain everything. But otherwise, you guys have a great weekend, okay? I'll be back on Sunday. So eat healthy, exercise, and I will be back again, and I hope to see you guys back again soon.